Retiring at 60? Absolutely not. This is when I started a new life. I filed a patent, I finished a PhD, and started a new company. Throughout my life, I worked in the leather luxury industry until I traveled to the developing countries and visited a leather tannery. And I thought there must be something better behind a product. I decided there and then that I would stop working with leather. However, I didn't have a plan B. I decided to stop all. I remortgaged my house and I started a journey of 12 years of research and development. It was in the Philippines where I discovered weavers using these pineapple leaf fibers, which are the byproduct of the pineapple harvest. And then I thought, what if I make a new skein using these fibers? The pineapple fibers are then made into a non-woven mesh, and then they are moved to Spain when it is finished, which is then mass-produced and ready for the world market. Pinatex is one of the most sustainable materials in the market. It's saving natural resources and giving employment to people in developing countries. It's never too late to change your life for the better and for a sustainable future for all of us.
I'm excited to introduce Carmen Hijosa, who is the inventor of Pinatex, a really innovative product made out of pineapple fibers. Carmen, we've got some questions for you about your product, and I wonder if we could go through a couple of those with you. First of all, are there any aspects of heritage or tradition that you called on for the development of your pineapple leather?
Oh, absolutely. I have called on prior, in fact, to developing the Pinatex, which is the pineapple, what we call plant-based material, because it's not in reality a leather. To get to that point, I had to get knowledge and be familiar with what was traditional in the Philippines to know how to use the fibers, because once you decide not to use one material, you have to become familiar with other materials, which to me were natural fibers. Traditions, for example, I did a huge amount of research, and I was very lucky to be working with the Design Center of the Philippines, so that really, made it very easy for me to go to places and to talk to people I didn't even understand their language. This is another thing. But, for example, basketry, it's so beautiful and such a strong tradition, particularly in the northern part of the Philippines. And then they use this, rattan, they use buntal, different fibers, which inspired me tremendously to understand, number one, the potential. To me, you've got to go from one place and these baskets, if you think of design and form, they're perfect. They have been basically fine-tuned through generations of skills and minimum amount of fuss, if you like. To me, that the perfect designs, and they have been a huge inspiration for me to develop this containers, forms, baskets, bags, whatever it may be. And then the skills of people also has been very important, because you really have to think, what can I share? Because it's a total collaboration when you start working in a place like this. You need to respect, you need to listen, you need to share, and you need to learn a lot. And then from the tradition, I jumped into more contemporary, which would have been the 19th century, and realized how they were using these fibers, particularly the pineapple leaf fiber, which was used even to this day as a hand-woven, beautiful textile, very light, very sophisticated, very expensive. It was the luxury of its time, and it still is the luxury. So tradition and traditional ways, crafts, and from folklore, if you like, to contemporary 19th century has been absolutely the root and the base and inspiration for all my work.
Thank you.
It's like, what do you think, what is needed from businesses as yours to enable the fashion industry to adapt to these climate change realities? like in customer behavior, understanding the value of sustainable resources, and maybe just to maximize impact?
Let's break that down a little bit. If we start with customer behavior, I think, people's values are changing really fast. As a business, we've got to listen and we've got to adapt to their values, which are the reality values. If we think of young generation today, they really are leading in understanding and having this energy and drive for transparency, much more humaneness, which we really have to have in our business. So I think that is really very important. From the point of view of a product, a company, in the fashion industry particularly, but in all of them, we've got to have so much more transparency as well. To me, circular economy is absolutely key. We've got to look far into the beginning of a supply chain to really understand, how our product benefits or affects, the people at the other side of the world most of the time. What are the values we bring? What is the, economic, social, cultural, environmental values and responsibilities? So I think it's a lot of shifting and a lot of encompassing much bigger picture than what, let's say 20th century materialistic business would be based on, okay? The 21st century is different. We really need to bring other values, much more humane values and realities into the way we work. I hope I answer all your questions.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So perhaps I could pick up on that one, Carmen. I was going to ask you about the 3 most important aspects in the development of your product. And you might have touched on those already in your previous answer, but perhaps you could reinforce that.
I think that probably the most important aspect of the first one, really, in my case, when you are you're founder of a company, you bring a product out there, something breaking ground, you've got to have huge determination to really make sure that things happen. I mean, it's not an easy ride, that's for sure. You really have to conquer every day whatever needs to do, and we've got to be extremely focused. But talking about the development of the product, I think in our case, and today, we've got to think of the supply chain. I mean, again, particularly in my case, there was no supply chain. Now, if think about fashion industry and developing something without a supply chain that is already there, is extremely difficult, I mean, even thinking of going to the cooperatives, the farming cooperatives in places that, it's even difficult to get to. I can say that as of today, we develop machines, to extract the fibers. We co-design, we develop systems, we share knowledge. That's just the beginning. And then you go into the manufacturing stage, which is really the textile from non-woven. That nobody had done this kind of non-woven. We know that it's a very known industry, obviously, but what I did with these fibers, it wasn't there before. So, the trials and errors that, the R&D in this and again and again and again, that is something. And to have people basically knowing, you're going to factories, they've got to stop the production line and they've got to put this tiny bit of samples there and they have to clean these huge machines. I mean, to develop a supply chain from the start to the end using known technology in most of it is still quite an achievement, really. And obviously funding is key.
Yeah.
I mean, if we have no funding, I mean, I think for any startup, any company, but small companies, funding is really kind of like every day you finish a round of funding and another few months nearly, you have to start another one. So, and that kind of long-term planning of where are we going, what are we going to need in 3 years' time, and now 5 years' time is absolutely critical as well.
So once we just talking about funding, especially for, startups and creative businesses, what support helped you the most in your early years of your company?
I think the biggest support, the most critical support, was when I went from RCA, the college, into innovation RCA, right? I mean, as an incubator. That was absolutely critical. And I must say, I'm really thankful for that. Nadia was really good on this, you know, the director of Innovation RCA. They gave us the most holistic understanding of, you know, what is a business plan. I mean, that was the first time I had to write a business plan. It wasn't easy, and to understand, you know, pitching, looking for funding, looking for collaboration. So it's important to really be in this particular kind of cocoon, and it was super important because, you know, and I was also a mature student. I mean, I had business before. So I just imagine if you really come out nearly like a, you know, young graduate, you need a holistic support to make you understand what is the market, what is the kind of funding, how do you prepare to get funding, you know, what is needed. So it was critical, absolutely, and I will be always very grateful for this.
Thank you.
So what was the biggest barrier to the development of your idea and your product?
I think, yes, the biggest barrier possibly was, particularly at the beginning, not to have access to research and development, you know, technical institutes, because there was a, you know, because it's a difficult thing. I remember, in fact, even when I was in Royal College, to go to places, you know, that they do technical trials, this kind of thing in textiles. They're always busy, and if you don't really show that you've got potential, you've got somebody there, it's very hard to get the right amount of help. And obviously, funding is quite important as well. But I think this was quite difficult, and I had to fight terribly hard to really be listened to and yeah, get the right support, because, you know, you've got to be a little bit of everything as a startup. You really need to know about finances. You know, particularly if you come from the background of design, you know, we are expected so much from design background. You have to know about business. You have to become a scientist. You have to be a top researcher, which is absolutely key as well. You know, so after doing your research, you've got to find solutions for that, which really usually entails collaboration with, could be biochemist in my case, you know, could be particularly, yeah, chemistry and science-based research. So that was quite difficult, actually, particularly at the beginning.
Thank you. Such impressive and exemplary work to create impact with local weavers, textile constructors. So could you please tell us more about how they benefited from this new way of using pineapple fibers, and, you know, like what they learn in this relationship, in this partnership?
Exactly, you just said it. It is really partnership, because we really spend so much time sharing and working together. And we have a company now in the Philippines, which was very important because, you know, as a consultant there, I knew that once you leave the place, things just don't work, right? So it's very important to have local counterparts. It's basically critical, so things keep moving. And by having a company there, we basically have our partners that look into what happens in the supply chain. The benefit is very big, because number one, we're giving employment. I mean, in 2020, which was a really difficult year, we actually employed or gave employment to more than 100 people in rural communities, and that is pretty good already, you know, and it now is increasing again. So we bring employment, we bring hope as well. When I mean, I've got a lovely little video which I may share with you about the Tivoli cooperative. When I was there in March last year. I just ran out 2 days before lockdown, but it will show you what it really means for these, particularly women, you know, to have a job. They can actually bring the kids that sometimes they're not with them all together because they can't afford to have them. Some people don't even exist because they don't have the papers to be there, and they can get a job. They can be part of a cooperative, meaning that they are part of nearly a society. They are really respected, because this is something that may not happen all the time. They have a voice as well. They have a job, and they have a job which is secure, and they have I mean, it's not the social security, but it is a guaranteed job, and they can have, I mean, sorry, I don't know how it really is exactly, but they are, by having this job, they have health security, and they have money. If they don't have if they cannot work, as it happened with COVID, they still get paid. I mean, we actually were very strict on that. We paid everybody from Ananas Anam'ın to make sure that they could really keep alive in a way, right? So then we help them with systems. I mean, don't forget that even grading these fibers, it didn't exist. So you have to teach people how to, develop systems to understand quality, to understand how to work, to understand how to use less water, to understand how to really be more efficient in the way the fibers are extracted. So it's a huge amount that goes on all the time. From the humane point of view, economic point of view, social point of view, everything really. We really work hand in hand with our, particularly in the first stage of the supply chain, which is the most vulnerable, and it's also the most important for us,
Such inspiring. Thank you.
Carmen, I've got a question for you that's around specifically around climate change and the farming of the pineapple. Is climate change impacting on your material sourcing and on your farming methods?
Absolutely, and we can hear that. We had a meeting, in fact, last week with our partners in the Philippines, and they were saying how the seasons are changing. We're in the rainy season, but we're in a very long, it seems to be long and different and difficult rainy season, meaning that before it's only 20 years ago when I started working there, it was much more defined. You knew when it was the dry season and the rainy season. Today, there seem to be much more mixed together, which is a terrible way, because we need to dry fibers, we need to harvest things at a particular time. This is one way that we are very much aware of it in our processes. Another one, for example, is the bigger picture of more typhoons. The Philippines are really hit very badly by typhoons. So there seem to be more and more typhoons in places where before there were not typhoons. This is really another thing. And for example, in 2020, one volcano very close to our plant, in fact, very close, erupted, in Tagaytay is called, close to Manila. And the whole plantations around it, of pineapple, which is that's one of the reasons we were around there. Basically, they were covered by ash. People had to leave the place. It was terrible. I mean, it was terrible for the people, but we were without fiber for about 6 months, and that was one of the reasons. So you can really see how it directly affects us.
We are so honored to have you, Carmen. Lastly, do you have anything to say or recommend, especially for young creative individuals and design enthusiasts?
Yes, of course. I think we've got a huge responsibility, right? And any creative mind that wants to put something in the world has to really see the big picture of what are my personal responsibilities, what am I doing, and how this is going to affect the world. Because we need to think globally, but then I believe very strongly that we have to bring things locally as well, Think the big picture and act locally. I think this is really very, very important, particularly nowadays. We have to care. I think we have to bring a lot of humanity and a lot of love, and I really mean this, we have to care more for people and planet, and to me this is extremely important. business is important, but business has to have a reason to be a business. Again, the 21st century needs and yes, requires from us, the creators, but also as you create, you move business, you move money, you move products, you move things. We need to become much more aware of our responsibility, be much more empathetic of what our work really represents in the world. We've got a lot of power, really, and we need to use it properly, but the properly is not just to think about ourselves and to make a lot of money. It's really to think about what is our impact in the world and what is our responsibility. And this to me is absolutely critical. In fact, the more we mature in our business, this is becoming more and more important.
Just to say, Carmen, fantastic. This is just lovely, really great. Thank you so much for this Q&A. It's really super.
Wonderful. Well, I'm really glad. And as I say, we're here to help. I meant to say that one of the important things in our business is also gender equality, which we're actually basically very balanced in gender. This is also terribly important, right? We've got to make sure that this aspect it's looked upon, and we actually try to employ more and more women, which we are doing now. So this is what you will see in this tiny little video, but I think it's quite inspirational.
Thank you so much, Carmen.
Yes.
And we won't take up any more of your very precious time, but we do really appreciate today. Thank you so much. Really great to see you.
Lovely. The same. Bye for now, and thank you. Take care.
Bye now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Anda ano tanga magono untuk gasto do untuk silak para bekam ngau kawan gono adalah tabag bawa stiri tabau para bekpemelia may wajib ngau nagi dan itu sulatin nang bagong lan nagpagana nang